This review is about an animated TV show from Japan that preceded the popularity of anime in America. The show is called Space Battleship Yamato, or Uchu Senken Yamato in Japanese. The series first debuted in Japan in 1974 and was syndicated to America under the name Star Blazers in 1979. There was very little animated content from Japan on my TV in the 70s, and we didn't even know what anime was yet. Of course, there was Speed Racer, but I didn't know it was Japanese, and there was nothing else to compare it to. To me, Japan was Godzilla and Shogun Warriors toys. I was 11 years old in 1979, and there were two cartoons that looked a lot like each other, but looked nothing like all the others. The kid that had the Shogun Warrior toy told me that they looked different because they were from Japan. Those shows were called Battle of the Planets and Star Blazers, which came on in that magic spot right after I got home from school, but before my parents got home from work. This was a golden time of the day because I could watch TV and not be bothered. This was 2 years after Star Wars, and anything space was cool. There were lots of good sci-fi oriented cartoons on TV in Dallas in the 70s. The main bulk of them came from Hanna-Barbera with the Herculoids, Space Ghost, and Johnny Quest, but there was also Star Trek the Animated Series and the ever-cool Thundar the Barbarian. There was also comedy stuff like the Jetsons and all the other Hanna-Barbera cookie-cutter comedy sci-fi cartoons, but I didn't really go for that. So like I said, these cartoons were different. Not only did they look different, but they seemed to have more evolved storylines. With American cartoons, it was the same template of bad guys attack good guys eventually vanquished bad guys, and at the end of the episode, you seldom ever saw that particular bad guy again. But with these new cartoons, there were more complex themes, and it wasn't so dumbed down and oversimplified like the American stuff. Both of these new shows were about defending the Earth from hostile aliens, but the difference was that Star Blazers had an episodic progression and a clear-cut goal, whereas Battle of the Planets was more of a robot monster of the week type show, and it didn't get you as emotionally invested. I want to add that I really didn't become a fan of anime during the first wave in '83. I remember seeing it a lot at sci-fi conventions, but it just really wasn't my thing. I did watch Akira on a bootleg VHS with no subtitles around '89 or '90, and even though I didn't understand it, I thought it was cool, but it still didn't make me a total weeb. Flash forward to the YouTube age, and I find a playlist of the entire season of the original Japanese version of Space Battleship Yamato with subtitles. This gave me a chance to watch the entire series the way it was shown on Japanese TV in 1974. Here's a synopsis of the first season. The planet Gamulus is trying to conquer Earth by sending bombs through space to irradiate the planet. Humans are driven underground and will die off if something is not done to stop the Gamelusians. A mysterious woman crash lands on Mars and dies after leaving a message cylinder behind. The message states that there is a device on her home planet of Iskandar that will clean up the radiation and give the planet Earth a chance to survive. Included in this message cylinder are plans for a wave motion engine and a wave motion gun. The engine will make it possible for pre-warp Earthlings to make the trip to Iskandar, and the gun will help to defend against the Gamulus forces. The Yamato and its crew will have to travel 148,000 light years and back within a year, or it will be too late for the Earth. At first, I thought the premise was a bit goofy for a naval battleship to be converted into a spaceship, but that was a minor issue because the show was so good on all other levels. It also had great music and sound effects. My favorite is the shock cannons. The music is also very 70s and they lean heavy on the wah-wah. The soundtrack is good at matching the mood of a scene and becomes more familiar once you get further into the series. I find myself playing this music in my head a lot lately, and the theme song of the show is a particular earworm. So, let's talk about the difference between the Japanese and American versions. First being the obvious stuff like the Americanized character names. On the Yamato, they have regular surnames like Kodai, Shima, Yuki, and Captain Okita, whereas their American counterparts have spacey names like Wildstar, Venture, Nova, and Captain Avatar. The American version acknowledges that they have built a spaceship out of a World War II Japanese battleship called the Yamato, but they rename it the Argo. The villains in Japan are called Gamalusians, the planet is called Gamulus, and their emperor is Lord Dessler. Their American counterparts aren't much different. They are called Gamelons, and the planet is called Gamelon. Their leader is named Deslok. But here is the biggest difference between the Japanese and American versions. Adult themes! Of course, we're not talking about hentai or tentacle porn here. When I say adult themes, I mean more grown-up storylines. Here's the first thing that we're going to address. There is only one female crew member, and her name is Yuki. She is presented as an equal while she goes on dangerous missions. She is an explosives expert, a biologist, part of the emergency medical team, and a member of the main bridge crew. However, during downtimes, Yuki is relegated to subservient roles like morale officer and serving the men coffee, and she's always fainting or having to be rescued or told that everything's going to be okay. Not only that, but she has to fend off a horny robot that keeps hiking up her skirt in front of everyone. I know for a fact that they edited out the panty shots of the American version because if they hadn't, every kid would be talking about it the next day at school. So yeah, there is some pretty blatant sexism in this show. The second difference is the level of violence. Both have space battle scenes where the enemy ships explode and damage is done to the Yamato, but here's the difference. And even then, it is when the Gamelon ships blow up, and it is just implied that they die. In the Japanese version, we see people dying in almost every battle. There's even one scene where the repair crews are blown up trying to repair the outside of the ship during a battle. Then there's the episode that they wouldn't even show to American audiences. That episode is called Death Struggle, God Weep for the Gamelons. This is the moment where the Yamato reaches Gamulus. The planet has such intense volcanic activity that the seas became sulfuric acid and it ate away at the interior, causing the planet to be hollow. The Yamato is pulled into the planet Gamulus by Dessler, who intends to use the corrosive sea to dissolve the ship. The destruction of Gamulus occurs when the Yamato fires the wave motion gun into the base of a volcano, which causes planet-wide eruptions. The militaristic Gamelons are destroyed by their own weapons, which fall on their cities as the outer crust collapses. After the battle, here's how the protagonists respond to the devastation.
私たちは何ということをしてしまったの。私にはもう神様の姿が見えない。
愛し合うことだった。勝利か。クソでも食らえ。
In conclusion, I can't imagine an anime fan who doesn't at least know about this show, even if they haven't actually seen it. American audiences also got a second season, and the new enemy was the Comet Empire, aided by a disgraced Deathlock. Space Battleship Yamato continued with several feature-length films, both animated and live action. If you want some context for the first wave of anime to come through America in the early 80s, then I would recommend watching this series. Well, that's it for my review of Space Battleship Yamato. You can get this content early along with other exclusive content when you support me on my Patreon page. I'm Rockula. See you next time.